Ramaphosa is engaging with the Businesswomen's Association of South Africa and the UN Women this morning. Let's go live now to listen in to the dialogue that's been organized by the Businesswomen Association.
For female business leaders to do business with government and other businesses, but also within other countries and operations. How high of a priority do you make access to markets for female-owned businesses with their peers across the continent and even across the globe that you get to engage with?
Well, my starting point there is we need to have more and more women-led businesses in manufacturing, because the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement is really going to open enormous opportunities. And as it opens opportunities, there should not just be opportunities we speak about. There should be opportunities for trading goods that should be sold, and those products need to be made. So my emphasis then is that in the manufacturing space, we need to see more and more women. And I'd like to also say that, sometimes when we travel, and I've often insisted that when we travel, either on a state visit, I often want to precede that visit in that country we go to with a business forum, where we bring businesses of our own country and businesses of the local country together. Now, I'd like to see more and more women-led businesses from South Africa traveling with me, going to those countries where we are going to be signing agreements with various presidents in other countries. Mm-hmm. Women must be there. They must be seen, they must be heard, and they must participate with others. They must be there to trade their goods. So that once we have those forums, they move from contact to contract. And I want to see a galaxy of women, like what I'm seeing here, in those types of forums, where women demonstrate their capability, their know-how, and their innovative nature. Mm-hmm. So we want to open markets for women-led businesses in our country so that they can trade. And we, at government level, want to empower them more and more. And we call upon the private sector to also open up spaces for women-led businesses, because it is the big companies that must support the medium, small enterprises. And I want to make a call and continue to make a call on the business community to give women-led businesses great opportunities to get into that space, because women-led businesses are often much more productive, they're much more hardworking, they are more innovative, they are more courageous, they are much more productive than others. I won't name the others.
Some might say you're preaching to the choir if you could hear the agreement within the audience here, Mr. President. But I do want to challenge some of those outcomes, because many of these initiatives have been tried before. Yeah. Policies have been written, and even several trade missions also established to ensure that women businesses do participate. But unfortunately, along the way, a lack of accountability tends to come in, and malfeasance and lack of leadership also does occur, including financial leakages that also take place in this regard. How are we going to make sure that those trade missions that you call on, how do we ensure that the additional partners within the private sector and civil society are going to be held accountable to see and act measurable outcomes in future?
Well, this is where this Businesswomen's Association then comes in. And this is where various other entities and organizations come in. And this is where the leaders of business women's companies come in. Because, as they say, if you sit in a corner, how are you going to get it? Yes. So we've got to get to a point, because this is a struggle. A struggle was never fought and won by people just sitting in a corner. We have now entered a new struggle where we've got to empower the women of our country. Don't see it as a Sunday picnic where we sit in the park and have, wine and have a braai. This is a struggle. There's going to be resistance and obstacles along the way, and we've got to jump hoops and loops to get to where we want to go. So the struggle is not won yet. Even as our strategic objective is to have a non-racial, a non-sexist, a democratic and a prosperous South Africa, those 4 strategic objectives still have to be won. What we achieved in 1994 was a breakthrough. It gave us a platform to be able to tackle all these important struggles. We still have to ensure that South Africa becomes a truly non-racist country.
Yes.
There is still racism. There are huge pockets of racism. We've got to fight against that. But for me, the most important one is the non-sexist South Africa that we want to achieve. There's still much work that needs to be done. So we've got to ensure that we do it. I mean, part of the process is making sure that women are well represented in decision-making structures. Now, our parliament is beginning to resemble the type of parliament that we would want. We've got more women represented. In the governing party that I lead, every structure now, and Minister Maite Nkwana Mashabane and them made sure that every structure that we have in the governing party is a 50-50 structure. And in some cases, we even have slightly more women and all that. We've got to make sure that in the corporate world, the management, as my sister was saying, is still lagging behind. In the boardroom, we're still lagging behind. Is that a struggle that must be fought? My answer is yes. Am I going to support you in that struggle? My answer is yes. I'm going to join you in that struggle to make sure that we win that struggle and have boards, management teams, and every other aspect of decision-making structure in South Africa, an equalized structure where gender parity is the order of the day.
Indeed, and attained within our lifetime and for the benefit of
within our lifetime. I'm 67 now, and within my life, I've got maybe 20 more years to go. Within 20 years, it must be done.
I'm sure you have a lot more, Mr. President. In a moment, we will cross to the audience just to gauge some of their views and share some of their questions that they do want to have with us. But, Mr. President, you're known for your tagline, Tumamina.
Yes, ma'am.
As the former president of Businesswomen Association alluded to. And we also want to understand how you want to send us into the world to make a change with regard to gender parity. None of this can really take place without pure and true collaboration between members of the public and members of the private sector. You often are told as a leader that you need to create an enabling environment in order for the private sector to unleash and unlock new economic opportunities. But what is it that you, as government, request of the private sector in order to walk the talk and meet you halfway with regard to this objective?
Well, you know, the private sector, and I keep calling on the private sector to open opportunities for women and young people, young women as well. Open up opportunities in the form of employment, in the form of job opportunities to prepare young people for work, and businesses to ensure that they procure from women-led businesses, they empower and strengthen those businesses, they incubate those businesses and all that. Now, you want to know, how do I want to Tuma you? There's a whole range of things that I'd like the women of our country to do. One, never keep quiet. Speak out about everything, from gender-based violence to the lack of, transformation in various structures, be it in business, be it in other structures. Never keep quiet. If you ever had sellotape on your mouth, take it out and speak out. That is the first thing that I say. Continue agitating for the attainment of a non-racist, a non-sexist South Africa. That is an important struggle that needs to be engaged on and fought for. So women must never sit back. And the more women talk, the more women, yes, even lobby, the more women even agitate and advocate and mobilize for the cause of women, the better South Africa will be. Because we know that the strength, the power of women is just overwhelming and overriding. And that is what we need South Africa to recognize, and the men of South Africa to recognize, that in the women of our country, we've got the best strength, because they've been held back, and we've never as they say in Zulu, asiphelelanga with the absence of our women. We must all be there, and women play a much greater and a better role than the others who I will not name.
There's another element that does speak to the participation of women, Mr. President, and it does speak to the societal pressures that we also face. The mere fact that a woman is regarded as the primary caregiver for her children. It's been reported in various studies that this inequality when it comes to payment and the pay gap between men and women is exacerbated by childbearing, which in itself also adds more pressure in the competitive nature between women who choose to have children and those who don't. Now, there's a number of countries who have advanced in this particular policy, Rwanda and Iceland in particular, who have allowed both men and women to take paternity and maternity leave and changed the mindset regarding both parents being primary caregivers, which has thus increased the level of fair pay between those two genders. At what point in South Africa are we not only going to have this conversation, but see it being interpreted into policy and, most importantly, being implemented within the workspaces of South Africa?
Well, I would like us to get there as quickly as possible. And this is one other area where we want to hear the voices of women. This is where you need to raise your voices to a higher decibel. And you will find that there will be many others, including myself, who are going to join you and support that. So it is a policy process that we need to get engaged in, and I'd like to see us do that. Just as you started on this comment right now, I've just come back, and I'm sorry I ran a bit late. Just came back from a meeting with Melinda Gates. We had Professor.
A common friend of yours, of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
No, not even that. Yes, no. She's here. Olive Chisana and my wife Tsepo and the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation people met her, and she was here just to find out what I would like to do as the incoming chair of the AU, what I would like to focus on. And I said to her, obviously as chair of the AU, I've got to focus on continental issues. For instance, silencing the guns is one, to make sure that we have peace on our continent. And of course, economic development. But then I told her that one of the areas I want to focus on is the empowerment of women. And she was delighted, because she then said that they are going, as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, going to deploy $1 billion to empower women around the world. And I said, I want part of that money here in Africa.
Can't you share the percentage?
So both Melinda Gates and myself were of common mind in terms of the empowerment of women, and I'm going to make it a huge program to be appropriated and to be embraced by the various presidents on the continent. We've got to move on with the empowerment of women and make sure that women are well empowered economically. And that is something that I'd like us to move on with. And Tsepo, my wife, wants to move on with the children aspect, to make sure that, early childhood development becomes the order of the day as well. So I think we're onto something very good here. We're going to be joined by global people. The President of France is also going to be part of this, and the Prime Minister of Canada. So together we're going to focus on the empowerment of women and make sure that we embark on programs. Now, this is where I am going to rely on the wisdom of the leaders and membership of the Businesswomen's Association that you are, because we need to strengthen and sharpen our own sort of understanding of what needs to be done on the continent, including the very issue that you raised, that women bear children, and quite often they are the ones who are lumped with the responsibility of bringing up children and all that. And we need to make sure that men also participate in a meaningful way and unleash the power of women to be able to be active economically.
We haven't mentioned them throughout this whole conversation, and you've often said you won't refer to that other party, but I'd like us to do so today. There's a scattering of a few gentlemen who've joined us here today, and you yourself, Mr. President, have generated and shown a great sense of chutzpah in the female participation of members of government as well as various ministries that you've appointed, and have really come forward as a true advocate for female participation in South Africa.
Yes.
The truth of the matter is that talk shops and conversations like this cannot happen in isolation with just women in the room. We do need more men on board. And what we've realized across the continent is that given the cultural dynamics, given the history that we have, that can at times be a challenge. What is your message to men out there to be part of the solution and also make a concerted effort to address many of the challenges that have been highlighted today?
Well, we've taken a conscious decision that even at the cabinet level we're going to have parity. And we do have amongst the ministers 50-50. The Deputy President and myself just mess it up by being men. That's a fault of our gender. Otherwise, we could have had a cabinet that's 50-50. But put that aside.
Are you looking to change that anytime soon, perhaps?
Well, I can't change my gender right now, can I? So we're looking forward to making sure that, and the governing party has also insisted on that. And this is a major development that's hardly ever noticed and talked of, that in the structures of our government, we've made sure that there is full empowerment, and where it is lacking, we bolster it with taking other initiatives. And we are going to be moving forward as a country in that direction completely. So we've taken the task of empowering women in decision-making structures very seriously.
Okay, we dipped in there in that dialogue that's currently taking place in Johannesburg between the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and members of the Businesswomen Association of South Africa, where issues of how to fast-track and improve the empowerment of women, not just in South Africa, but also elsewhere on the continent, are being discussed today.